Welcome back to The Full View. Eskom has implemented stage 6 rolling blackouts until further notice. The power utility says this is due to the failure of additional generating units and the delay of several units to return to service. It says stage 6 load shedding is anticipated to persist throughout the week. And of course, we will continue to explore all things Eskom. Let's speak now to a professor. William Gumede says the prospect of a grid collapse is very real. He's been writing for Times Live, and of course, he is associate professor at the Wits School of Governance. Professor Gumede, thank you so much for being with us. What are the chances of a grid collapse, and what will it mean?
Good evening, and thank you for having me on the program. And sorry for my visuals because it's stage 6.
No problem. In these times, we're happy we have something, Prof. Go ahead.
Okay. I mean, the big thing is really there is a real prospect, and we cannot rule it out, that we may have a grid failure. Obviously, stage 6 is a parcel of grid failure. And secondly, what has happened, many companies and many businesses have already almost risked in the failure of the grid and potentially a full grid failure. Even the Reserve Bank itself, a couple of weeks ago, said that it has put in risk mitigation processes. But the important thing is, I think that we are not debating enough the prospect of a grid failure, number one, and secondly, what the implications would be for a grid failure. If one look at almost the lack of seriousness in dealing with the power issue from governments, most of the measures that we've seen so far has been very superficial, tinkering on the margins, not dealing with the real issues, and that actually, if that continues, if we continue on that trajectory of very superficial measures, we will get a grid failure.
Some would argue it's even worse than that. At points it seems like it has seemed as if ministers have been squabbling over who's responsible for what. A new energy minister was appointed by the president, but it's been a while before, it took a while before we started even understanding what his powers would be. It seemed like those were not delineated. Is that a major fail in the midst of a crisis?
The appointment of electricity minister really is one of those unserious measures. It's a gimmick. We know, before his appointment, the problem that, one of the reasons why there has been a lack of dealing with the energy issue is duplication. Too many fingers in the pie. You had public enterprises playing oversight, but we also had the energy minister playing oversight. Then we have, obviously, cabinet having an oversight, then the National Executive Committee of the ANC having an oversight, and then the Deployment Committee of the ANC also having an oversight. Now, normally in a company, and any company, whether it's a state-owned company, a public or a private company, it is, corporate governance is very clear. You have your CEO, you have your board, you have your management, and they give the direction, and the board have an oversight. Now, with all of these multiple oversight mechanisms that Eskom has had in the past, and now the addition also of electricity minister means actually it will cause more paralysis, it will cause more indecision, because there's just too many people trying to run the organization.
Yeah, especially if it's not clear who is responsible for what. Professor, you go further. You say the energy crisis cannot be resolved without the ANC taking head on its own vested interests. What are those?
The big reason why we haven't had a movement, obviously, one has been a policy failure in the past, the neglect of maintenance. That's a policy failure. Then there's the element of corruption. Corruption, whether it's corruption in procurement, contracts, and so on. And then there's obviously deployment of people many without technical skills, and then also the organization is overstaffed if one compared with other kinds of utilities, and then they're really efficient and performance. And then, in addition to that, some of the new assets, the new power stations have been built wrongly, not fit for purpose. It's been too costly, and so on, and they haven't come on stream. So at the moment, even if we use all of the coal that we have in the country, Eskom does not have the proper assets, to work through their coal. So what we're having in the air is vested interests at an entity, which makes bringing efficiency makes it very, very difficult. I mean, there's also other vested interests. For example, state-owned companies. If you look at the state oil company, for example, providing diesel to Eskom and selling those diesel to Eskom at above the market price. And Eskom cannot buy cheaper diesel, for example, from the market. But if for example, Eskom gets the ability to provide cheaper diesel straight from the market, not through the state-owned company, what it will then mean is it will then mean a collapse of the state-owned company. So there's a lot of state-owned companies also that are parasitic to Eskom and is reducing the efficiency of Eskom.
Well, let's end with, corruption and procurement and controversial deals, that's all been in the spotlight. What do you then think of car power ships, one of those controversial deals to try and fill the gap that has been created by the mismanagement of our energy system?
The sad thing about this is, there really is, we need urgent intervention, but even the urgent intervention that's coming in, there's a lot of allegations of corruption. We've seen it in the past with a nuclear deal that was signed with Russia, which is, where Russia was both a financer at the same time and the builder. There are kinds of deals in the world. We've seen it in Algeria and we've seen it in Egypt. It's absolutely terribly corrupt. A deal. So, and now, the power deal, the Turkish deal, also extraordinarily controversial. It is packed with, connected ANC members. So, corruption is so deep rooted that even the solutions that are there, the allegations of deep corruption, and even in those solutions. So the solutions are, many of the solutions, the allegations around it, that they are almost done for opportunistic reasons, not to deal with the issues. So it means that sometimes good solutions actually can turn up totally ineffective and totally corrupt. It's almost like, the two new power stations that were built for a good reason, then they were corrupt. They didn't make their deadlines, they were too costly, and now we're sitting with a debt. So the same may actually happen with all of the new solutions that's out there.
Sure. Associate Professor of the Wits School of Governance, William Gumede, thank you very much. Warning that the prospect of a grid collapse is very real unless the ruling party unites and really gets behind this crisis. And I dread that he uses the example of Lebanon, where the grid collapsed and the currency lost 90% in 2021. Food prices there increased by 550%.